My sister planned her boyfriend's surprise party on my wedding day, and my parents, they chose to attend that party instead. Now, after finding out I'm inheriting everything from my aunt and uncle, they're asking me to have my wedding again. I'm 28, and for as long as I can remember, I've felt like the black sheep in my family, especially when compared to my younger sister, Elaine, who's 26. The favoritism, particularly from our mom, has been obvious. Blatant, even. I've racked my brain trying to figure out why Elaine's the golden child, but no matter how hard I've thought about it, I've never come up with an answer. It's been this way since we were kids. When I was born, my parents were struggling, financially, emotionally, in every way you could imagine. So they made a decision. They let my aunt and uncle raise me for the first 6 years of my life. My aunt once told me that my mom had severe postpartum depression. It was so bad she couldn't even care for me. My aunt and uncle didn't hesitate to take me in. They knew the situation was serious. As a baby, I had no clue that my aunt and uncle weren't my real parents. I grew up in their home, surrounded by love, feeling safe, happy. But everything changed when I started school. That's when my parents began visiting. They'd sit me down, tell me they were my real parents, and that living with my aunt and uncle was just temporary. These visits left me feeling torn. I was excited to see them. I mean, who wouldn't be? But every time they left, taking Elaine with them, I felt abandoned all over again. This wasn't a one-time thing. It became a pattern. They'd come, spend a few hours with me, play, talk, act like everything was fine, and then leave. With Elaine. Always with Elaine. It was clear even then who their priority was. Meanwhile, my aunt and uncle showered me with love. They gave me everything they could. But those brief visits from my parents, they left me craving their attention, their approval. When I turned 6, they brought me back home. At first, I was over the moon. Finally, I'd be with my real family. But that excitement, it didn't last long. Life with my parents was nothing like the warm, nurturing home I'd known. One of the first things I had to adjust to was sharing a room with Elaine. She'd always had her own room. And get this, there was a spare bedroom. They could have given me my own space. But no. They insisted we share a room, said it would help us bond as sisters. Elaine? She hated it. Made sure I knew it too. If I played too loudly or read books my aunt and uncle had given me, she'd mock me, call me names. If I tried decorating my side of the room, she'd scoff, call me childish. I'd bring home a good grade from school, excited to show my parents, and she'd roll her eyes, mutter, "Teacher's pet." When I practiced guitar, the one my aunt and uncle gifted me, Elaine would sneer, "You sound awful, you should just quit." It didn't stop there. Even little things, how I organized my toys, the way I talked about my day, became ammunition for her. Over time, I realized the things I loved doing became the very things Elaine used to tear me down. The warmth I'd felt at my aunt and uncle's was replaced by tension, conflict. Elaine had a problem with everything I did, and it made me question myself. Imagine that. Your younger sister, the one you desperately want to bond with, ridiculing you for every little thing. It messes with your head. I started to think maybe I was the problem. Maybe if I just changed, I'd finally fit in. So I stopped reading my books at home, only at school. I quit playing guitar altogether. I thought, maybe if I stop doing the things she hates, she'll finally accept me. But no. No matter how much I tried to adapt, Elaine's attitude never changed. The more I tried to please her, the more I felt like I was losing myself. Even when I stopped doing the things that annoyed her, she found new ways to mock me. I remember hitting my early teens and getting acne like most kids do. Hormones, right? But Elaine, she pounced on it. Constantly told me how ugly I looked, how disgusting my face was. It hurt. More than I can even describe. I'd cry and go to our parents hoping for comfort. But instead, my mom would tell me to stop crying, to toughen up. Dad? He stayed out of it. Mom's advice? You need to stand up to your sister. Stop coming to me. So, there I was, bullied by my sister, dismissed by my parents. It left me feeling isolated, confused. I missed my aunt and uncle, missed the home where I'd felt valued, understood. Whenever they visited, they'd try to talk to Elaine, tell her to ease up, but she never listened. As I got older, that hurt turned into anger. I became this furious, frustrated teenager. Elaine, despite being younger, was more popular at school, and when I started making friends, she didn't like that. She spread rumors about me, trying to sabotage my friendships. But this time, I fought back. I confronted her about the lies, told my friends the truth. Elaine would run to our parents, crying about how I was being mean to her. And yeah, sometimes I'd get scolded, but standing up for myself, it felt good, even if it came with guilt. But the moment that truly showed me just how deep my parents' favoritism ran, my high school graduation. I'd worked hard, really hard, graduating with honors. I needed my parents to be there to see me walk across that stage, proud of me for once. But days before the ceremony, my mom sat me down. Elaine has a dance recital on the same day, she said. She needs us more. Her recital and my graduation weren't even at the same time. They could have easily gone to both. But no. Elaine wanted them at her full dress rehearsal, and that's exactly where they went. My mom assured me my dad would be there to... Jake wasn't about his character or how he treated me. It was about the fact that he wouldn't bend to her will. That realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My mother didn't dislike Jake because he was unkind or unsuitable. She disliked him because he refused to tiptoe around her opinions like everyone else did. I was furious. For years I had tried to earn her approval, molding myself to fit into the version of a daughter she seemed to want. But here was Jake, unapologetically himself, and it drove her crazy. It made me see things clearly for the first time. I no longer needed her validation, nor did I want it. Despite the tension, Jake and I moved forward with our wedding plans. We decided on a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family, the people who truly cared about us. I still felt conflicted about whether to invite my parents, but in the end, I sent them an invitation out of respect. I didn't expect much from them. A few weeks before the wedding, I received a call from my mother. Her tone was unusually cheerful, almost forced. She told me that Elaine's boyfriend's surprise birthday party had been scheduled for the same day as my wedding. I felt my stomach drop. I knew where this was going before she even finished. "We've decided to attend his party instead," she said casually, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "But don't worry, we'll make it up to you." Make it up to me? How do you make up missing your own daughter's wedding? I was stunned, unable to find the words to respond. The conversation ended awkwardly, with my mother sounding completely unfazed by what she had just told me. On my wedding day, I walked down the aisle without my parents there. But when I looked around at the faces of my aunt, uncle, friends, and Jake's supportive family, I realized I wasn't missing anything. I was surrounded by people who loved me genuinely and wholeheartedly. For once, I didn't feel like the black sheep. I felt like I belonged. Months passed, and I cut off most contact with my parents. I didn't see the point in keeping up appearances when they had made it clear where their priorities lay. But then something unexpected happened. A letter arrived from my aunt and uncle's lawyer. It stated that they had left me their entire inheritance. I was overwhelmed with emotion, not because of the money, but because it was a final affirmation of their love and belief in me. They had always seen my worth, even when my parents didn't. When my parents found out about the inheritance, their attitude shifted overnight. Suddenly, they were calling, texting, and trying to reconnect. My mother even suggested we renew our wedding vows and have a new ceremony, one they could attend this time. The audacity of it made me laugh. It was clear they didn't care about me. They cared about what I now had, but I wasn't the same person I used to be. I had Jake, I had my aunt and uncle's love, and I had finally found peace in knowing that I didn't need my parents' approval to feel whole. Chance to make up for it. But her words felt hollow, like a desperate attempt to save face rather than a genuine apology. I could hear it in her voice. The urgency wasn't about mending our fractured relationship. It was about the inheritance, the money she thought she deserved more than me. Every call, every message, it all revolved around the same theme, convincing me to sway my aunt and uncle. Not once did she ask how Jake and I were doing, how our new life together was starting. It was always about her. At first I ignored her calls, letting them ring out until they fell silent. But as the days went by, her persistence grew unbearable. Voicemails piled up, each one laced with a strange mix of feigned sorrow and subtle manipulation. She'd remind me of childhood memories, painting a version of our past where she was the doting mother. But I remembered the truth. The birthdays forgotten, the achievements overlooked, the constant shadow of Elaine looming over every part of my life. One evening, as Jake and I sat together, sipping wine and laughing about something trivial, my phone buzzed again. Another message from her. I could see Jake's jaw tighten, his patience wearing thin. "You don't owe her anything," he said quietly, his hand resting on mine. And he was right. But part of me wanted closure, a final conversation where I could say everything I had bottled up over the years. So I called her back. The moment she answered, her tone shifted to that overly sweet, insincere voice she always used when she wanted something. "Oh, honey, I'm so glad you called. I've been thinking about you every day." I didn't let her continue. "Mom, stop. Just stop." My voice was steady, firmer than I'd ever managed with her before. "You missed my wedding. You chose Elaine's boyfriend's party over me. And now you're only reaching out because you're scared of losing money, not because you actually care." There was a pause on the other end. I could almost hear her scrambling for the right words. "That's not true," she finally said, but her voice wavered. "I made a mistake, but I'm still your mother. Don't you think I deserve another chance?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years of neglect and hurt pressing down on me. "You had plenty of chances, and you blew every single one." She was silent again, but I didn't wait for her to respond. I ended the call, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. That was the last time I spoke to her. Now, as Jake and I build our life together, I've realized something important. Family isn't always about blood. It's about the people who show up, who support you, who love you unconditionally. My aunt and uncle had been more parents to me than my own ever were, and with Jake by my side, I finally felt free from the shadows of my past. I didn't need my mother's approval or her hollow apologies. I had everything I needed right here, between us. She confessed that she had always felt inadequate as a mother, especially after I went to live with our aunt and uncle. It was like she believed she'd already lost me. So she clung to Elaine, thinking it was easier than facing her own failures with me. Hearing those words hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so many years resenting her, building walls around my heart to protect myself from the pain of her neglect. But now, seeing her lying there, frail and hooked up to machines, the anger felt distant, like a shadow that had finally lost its grip on me. I didn't know what to say at first. Part of me wanted to forgive her right then and there, but another part, the part still aching from years of favoritism and disregard, held back. So I just squeezed her hand and said, "I'm here." And for now, that felt like enough. Over the next few days, our family hovered around the hospital like fragile threads trying to weave themselves back together. Elaine and I found comfort in each other's company. The tension between us softened by our shared concern for Mom. Even my aunt and uncle, despite everything, stayed close, offering support in ways I never realized I needed. But it wasn't all smooth. The issue of the inheritance still lingered like an unspoken storm cloud. One evening, while sitting in the hospital's dimly lit waiting room, my aunt pulled me aside. She assured me again that their decision to leave me their inheritance had nothing to do with spite or punishment toward my mother. "It's about love," she whispered. "It's about making sure you're taken care of, after everything." I nodded, but the guilt gnawed at me. I didn't want money to be the wedge that kept my family fractured, especially now, when it seemed like we were finally finding some common ground. As Mom recovered, we had more honest conversations, more than we'd ever had in my entire life. She listened in a way she never had before, really listened, and while it didn't erase the past, it started to mend the wounds. Slowly. When Mom was finally discharged from the hospital, things felt different. Lighter, maybe. We weren't magically a perfect family overnight, but there was a willingness now. A fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the broken pieces. Elaine and I made a pact to keep the lines of communication open, to not let old wounds fester in silence. And as for my mom, I told her that reconciliation wasn't about grand gestures or another wedding ceremony. It was about consistency, effort, showing up in the little moments, not just the big ones. Jake stood by me through it all, his steady presence grounding me when things felt overwhelming. Together, we decided that whatever the future held, whether my family healed completely or not, we'd face it with honesty and love. And maybe that's enough. She looked at me, her eyes glassy but steady. I always felt like I wasn't enough, she whispered. Especially after sending you to live with your aunt and uncle. Instead of trying to fix that, I threw myself into Elaine, and it messed everything up. Her voice trembled, but what she said next stopped me cold. Mom revealed she'd been seeing a therapist for the past month. She was trying to peel back the layers of her guilt, to understand why she had treated me like an outsider in my own family. The heart attack, she admitted, had been a jarring wake-up call. It made her realize she couldn't keep running from the truth. She needed to make amends before it was too late. Elaine, who had been quietly fiddling with her napkin, suddenly broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she blurted out an apology. She owned up to her part in the family dysfunction, confessing that she had basked in Mom's favoritism instead of calling it out. "I should have stood up for you," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry for missing your wedding, for not being the sister you deserved." The dam had broken. Years of bottled-up emotions surged to the surface. There were tears, sharp accusations, and truths that stung like open wounds. But amid all that chaos, something remarkable happened. We listened. Really listened. For the first time in, well, maybe ever. Just as the rawness of the conversation settled over us like a heavy fog, my aunt and uncle walked in. They sat down quietly but with purpose. Then they spoke. They explained, reasoned their reasoning behind the will, not as an act of favoritism, but as an attempt to balance years of inequality in our family. Their words were steady, firm, but kind. And then Mom did something I never expected. She turned to them, her voice soft but clear, and said, "Keep the will as it is." She admitted she finally understood why they'd made that choice. She wasn't going to contest it anymore. "I've been driven by fear and greed, not love," she confessed, her eyes flickering toward me. "But I see that now." That conversation shifted everything. It didn't magically erase the years of neglect and resentment, but it cracked open a door to healing, to honesty, to something better. We agreed, tentatively but genuinely, to attend family therapy together. We needed help learning how to relate to each other in healthier ways. This wasn't going to be an overnight fix, but for once we were all stepping in the same direction. As for Jake and me, we're cautiously optimistic. We've put up clear boundaries, keeping our emotional health front and center, while giving my family the chance to prove they're serious about change. Jake, as always, has been my anchor. His gentle reminders that it's okay to protect my heart have kept me steady. I know this journey won't be easy, but for the first time in years, I feel a flicker of hope. It's complicated, a mix of relief, anxiety, and old wounds that still throb, but I'm committed to seeing where this path leads, giving my family the space to make things right. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and the landscape of my family has shifted more than I ever imagined possible. The family therapy sessions? Tough as nails, but they've been a lifeline. We faced moments where it felt like we were tearing open old wounds, but in doing so we found moments of clarity and connection. The breakthroughs came slowly, but they came. Mom has stayed committed to her individual therapy, showing up to every session with a willingness to confront the pain she caused. There were days when our conversations left both of us in tears, raw from revisiting the past. But her sincerity is real. She's trying, not just with words, but with action. Elaine and I, we're finding our rhythm as sisters again. We've started having regular sister dates, nothing fancy, just coffee or a walk in the park. But these moments have become little windows into the person she's become without the shadow of competition and resentment between us. I'm starting to like this version of Elaine, maybe even love her again. Even my dad, who always sat on the sidelines during family conflicts, has stepped up. He's admitted to turning a blind eye for too long, enabling the dysfunction without realizing how deep the damage went. But now, he's making an effort to be present, to support both me and Mom in rebuilding what we lost. My aunt and uncle, they've been unwavering. Their support has been a pillar through this whole process. They even joined some of our therapy sessions, offering their insights on our family's history. The topic of their will isn't a ticking time bomb anymore. It's been laid to rest, no longer a source of tension. And Jake, my constant. He's been everything I needed and more. His patience, his understanding, his quiet strength. It's been a reminder of the kind of love I deserve. When things got overwhelming, he gave me space. When I needed a shoulder, he was there. But the most surprising development came last month. Mom approached Jake and me with an idea. She suggested renewing our vows on our first wedding anniversary. A small ceremony, just immediate family and close friends. At first I bristled, remembering how she'd once pushed for a second wedding out of guilt. But this felt different. It wasn't about erasing the past or making amends in a grand gesture. It felt genuine. Jake and I talked it over, and we agreed. This wasn't just about us. It was about celebrating our love and the progress our family had made. The ceremony was intimate, heartfelt. Seeing Mom, Dad, and Elaine there truly happy for us was a moment I'll carry with me forever. I won't pretend everything's perfect. Old habits sometimes creep back in, and there are still moments of tension. But the difference now, we have the tools to face them head on. We want to face them. Healing isn't linear. It's messy, complicated, and exhausting. But it's also worth it. I've learned that rebuilding family ties takes patience, forgiveness, and a shared commitment to change. I'm proud of the boundaries I've maintained and the growth I've achieved along the way. Thank you all for your unwavering support throughout this journey. Your words have been a source of strength when I needed it most. Our family story isn't finished, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to see what the next chapter holds.